The beta for New Gundam Breaker has come and gone, and almost nothing has changed. Let's get down to business right away. I played the game to near completion, because I don't have every part, nor do I have each inner frame maxed out. Outside of that, I've done everything else this game has to offer. New Gundam Breaker, as the title says, is the New Gundam Breaker, the fourth in a series of pretty solid games. The first being rather lackluster but solid enough to not be trash. The second being a lot of people's preferred game, and the third being the one in English that is somewhat worse than the second in some aspects, but still solid enough. New Gundam Breaker is a soft reboot of the franchise made in Unreal Engine, completely avoiding the previous engine, probably due to a different dev team. New Gundam Breaker's genre can be broken down like this. It is a Bishoujo game. It is a VN first before anything else. After the visual novel segments is the building of your Gunpla. That's the secondary genre. I think it's a genre. Building, I guess. Lastly is the actual action segments, the worst part of the game. Funny that. Before we get into gameplay, we need to talk about the other stuff. First of which being technical issues. They're still here, even from the beta. There were people that said that the framerate was smoothed out, and I can somewhat see that. The framerate still chugs, and the game still freezes for upwards 3 seconds. Speaking of framerate, I've seen it slow to a crawl during cutscenes. Problems like this should not be excusable, as the freezes, they happen online too, and you're effectively standing still while somebody gets to hit you for free. Hell, in the beginning of missions when your mobile suit is taking off, it spawns in backwards and quickly flips around to face the right way. That's been there since the beta, and it's still here. Couldn't they just make it face the right way? The sound design is acceptable. You get your same hit sounds as previously, borrowed from the show and the games, and clearly a lot of money went into voice acting. Maybe that's why the rest of the game is not so good. The game does have some rather big voice actresses from a lot of popular shows, even other Gundam shows. The voice actresses do tie into the visual novel segment. Music for the game is safe enough. You're not gonna find anything terrible, and it's also reusing tracks from the shows and games. Graphics are fine, they're acceptable. They're not offensive, they're inoffensive. Not the Vita version, because there is no Vita version. Though sometimes you'll see some stuff in the distance that won't look so great, and graphics do flicker sometimes. The models themselves are fine. When I was told that Famitsu said the visual novel segment was the best part, I honestly thought they were fucking around. They weren't, and the visual novel segment isn't even anything special. You start out on a single route for 4 missions, then it breaking up into 2 routes with girls that you effectively date, in the VN sense of, they're gonna like you at the end, regardless of what you choose. The better the ranking in those missions, the more builder parts you unlock. The more builder parts you unlock, the more girls you unlock. The story changes aren't that significant, as they follow the same basic plot and the same exact missions as the others in every route. There are small variations, like one girl might not get 1 or 2 missions, but the missions themselves play exactly the same. The cast of girls is pretty diverse. You have all the archetypes there, so if you really like your generic anime girls, they're all here for you. Building Gunpla is almost the exact same as the others. You have your different parts being your head, chest, arms, legs, backpack, melee, and ranged weapons, all customizable with color and weathering details, as well as decals for specific parts. There are a few differences with building than the previous ones, like EX skills being tied to the part. Well, I mean, before they were, but now you can't grind to equip them on whatever you want. Secondly, builder parts being stat bonuses, just flat stat bonuses and penalties. They're not as interesting as they were before, so now you can't just equip a bunch of funnel racks and just passively shoot everything with funnels. Now you just get, like, range up. Fun. Lastly, we have the inner frame. The inner frame is a pretty interesting change, as it changes up your burst. Your burst option being kind of like a super that you can trigger when a bar is full. it gives pretty significant bonuses that you grind for, like increasing damage, as well as some unique special moves given to each frame. There are 5 frames overall: Balance being balance, Striker being a melee frontline, Gunner being, well, a gunner, Enchanter being I want to spam EX skills because I hate everyone, and Searcher for those who want to go fast. It's a more interesting change than the previous burst options, but the 2 special moves that you get for each frame isn't customizable, and it's super boring compared to like the special GN Riser sword or whatever you liked previously. It's not bad, it's just lacking. And now here we are, just stuck in this box. The action segment of the game, the worst part. I'm not saying Breaker 1 or 3 had the most engaging gameplay. They were effectively just button mashers like this, but they were solid button mashers. 3 with all the improvements to the series, and having some fun air combos, even though the combos were one button. This one throws all of that away for a more generic, archaic combat system, where you commit to all your moves. It sounds great on paper. It does. But when the AI is just target you for the majority of the time and will surround you, hitting you over and over and over again, those slow, committed moves, they're a bigger detriment to the game. The EX skills that I spoke of, they're back, this time having 6 rather than 4, which also sounds nice, but you also gotta remember the lack of builder parts that make anything interesting. And then comes this big change. The part where you can't use any of your EX skills from the start until you level up your frame, which resets after every match, and resets during the final boss. The camera and locking on need work. The lock-on will sometimes target somebody you can't even see and swing you 180, and it's a mess. Which brings me to the mission structure. You get 2 types of missions: pair mission, which is just you and 1 AI partner killing some mook enemies, and 3v3, which is you and 2 AI killing some mook enemies, and maybe some rival characters who really like to target you. Missions will always open one of 2 ways. You will get a quest, and the quest will be kill 20 neutral enemies, or open 10 boxes. It starts this way so you can get some experience for your suit, as those starter enemies will die in 1 or 2 hits, and boxes are boxes. So you'll usually end up around level 3 or 4 after the starter quest. Then the game will trickle in some more quests, most of them being kill this mobile suit, or collect 3 parts, or kill 20 more enemies. They're not very interesting. Sometimes you'll see kill this PG, this mobile armor, or a ship at the end of missions, but even then it's not very interesting. Dying has almost no penalty outside of losing your held parts and resetting your burst gauge. If you're a bad enough dude, you can intentionally die to reset your GPO2 bazooka and just nuke twice with the gunner frame, die and repeat. Picking up parts has also become a chore, as you only hold 6 parts that you need to put in a box for you to keep at the end of the mission, that the enemy can just knock out of you over just touching the part and keeping it like in the previous game. Sure, mass deleting parts in the previous was annoying, but at least I could just grind without having to walk back and forth, avoiding combat so I don't miss out on what I want. Then comes the money to buy parts. You can't flat out buy a kit like you could before. Now you buy a single part, and money comes in really slow. So around 10 or so missions, if you're actively getting parts to sell, you can buy 1. And then there's multiplayer, which is the exact same structure as a regular 3v3, except this time you get some really awful netcode. Sometimes you'll see other people's Gunpla just sliding around with no animation, almost like they're T-posed. The story is inoffensive schlock. It's just Yu-Gi-Oh! With the villain being like, oh, you can have fun in Gunpla, it's not serious? Oops. As a huge fan of Gundam, it's really sad for me to see the state of this game. I knew from the beta that it would not be to par, plus with the summer game drought, it was there. It has huge issues it needs to iron out, from frame rate to core gameplay. I doubt they're going to patch it to make it a good Breaker game, but they could patch it to not run like absolute trash. If there is a sequel, like the first Breaker, then New Breaker 2 could be the best Breaker. I doubt that highly, but the option is there. Although Breaker 1 was not negatively received like this one, with Japan blowing it up on Amazon as Kusoge. If you're a Gundam fan and you haven't played Breaker 3, do yourself a favor and get that. If you've already played Breaker 3 and you want more, wait for a significant patch. I cannot recommend this game to people unless you really want the VN portion and are really into generic anime girls.